A new student joined our class. While everyone else was slaving away at practice problems, she was up on the rooftop playing guitar, wearing earrings and a short skirt. My childhood friend, Qin Qingzhou, was drawn to her carefree and unrestrained nature. He started smoking and skipping class with the new transfer student, and his grades plummeted. We were both destined for Harvard and Yale, and as childhood friends, his mother and I tried to talk him out of it together. Don't ruin your future over a girl. Upon hearing this, he cut off all contact with the transfer student. Eventually, we both got into Harvard as we'd hoped, and after graduating and establishing successful careers, we naturally started dating and eventually got married. On the day of the wedding, the transfer student committed suicide because he couldn't repay his high-interest loans. Qin Qingzhou said nothing and quietly went through the wedding ceremony. But on the night of the wedding, he took me back to my high school and pushed me off the 10th floor. If you hadn't stopped me, I'm sure I could have saved Wan, and she wouldn't have gone down the wrong path and ended up killing herself. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in that afternoon. The transfer student decided to skip the chemistry competition, which would have earned him extra credit, and take Qin Qingzhou to a concert instead. In my past life, I urged him to stay, and he listened to me. This time, however, Qin Qingzhou resolutely took the transfer student's hand and walked away without looking back. It was a sweltering afternoon in the height of summer during my senior year of high school. The entire school building was eerily quiet, with only the rustling sound of pencils scratching against exam papers, a dense, relentless hum that made everyone's nerves tingle. Everyone was frantically cramming for the college entrance exams, and the air was thick with a weary yet stubborn sense of anxiety. I sat by the window, staring at the dense array of chemical formulas before me, my fingertips feeling slightly numb. It's not because the questions are difficult. It's because that bone-chilling sense of weightlessness is still etched deep into my bones. I've been reborn. On the very night of my wedding to Qin Qingzhou, as fireworks lit up the sky and the festive sounds of gongs and drums had not yet fully faded, he pushed me off the 10th floor of the high school building with his own hands. The wind whistled past my ears, and just as my body began to fall, I heard his cold, venomous voice, every word cutting deep into my heart. If you hadn't stopped me back then, I would have stayed by Wan's side. She would never have ended up like this. And she certainly wouldn't have taken her own life. Su Zhixia, you ruined my life and you ruined hers, too. The bell rang, and my train of thought was abruptly interrupted. The clatter of students handing in their papers filled the room in an instant. Those sitting in front of and behind me were packing up their supplies while complaining that the questions were too obscure. Someone turned around and teased me. Zhixia, you're definitely going to be first again this time, aren't you? Of course not. When has a top student from Suchai University ever failed? Wow. You and Qin Qingzhou really are a perfect match. One's a science genius and the other's the top student in the humanities. I smiled but didn't say anything. She looked down and calmly put her pen back in its case, neither turning to look in Qin Qingzhou's direction as they suggested, nor sweetly adding, "He's better than me," as she used to, in our past life. Everyone envied us. They've been childhood sweethearts for over a decade, going from school uniforms to wedding gowns, with advanced degrees and successful careers. They're a perfect match, a handsome man and a beautiful woman, and everyone says they're a match made in heaven. But no one knows that our love has long since withered away, bit by bit, over the years. When we were kids, Qin Qingzhou was the one who was closest to me. Everyone on the old street knew that the Qin family's young man was always hanging around the Su family's young lady. In elementary school, she waited for me downstairs every day right on time. In middle school, she shielded me from all the pranks played by the mischievous boys. And in high school, she always stayed with me until the very end of evening study hall. In our freshman and sophomore years, we were widely recognized throughout the school as a dynamic duo. He was a top student in the sciences, and I excelled in the humanities. Our teachers were convinced we'd get into Harvard, and our parents assumed we'd end up getting married. Back then, Qin Qingzhou had eyes only for me. He'd warm up my breakfast and hand it to me, patiently walk me through the toughest science exam questions, and when I cried after failing a test, he'd look down at me and whisper, "It's okay. I'm here, and I'll always be by your side. But ever since the transfer student Lin Wanwan arrived, she's been like a sudden gust of wild wind, stirring up the heart that had remained calm for over a decade. She is completely different from us, who always follow the rules, while others buried themselves in their studies. She wore short skirts and delicate stud earrings, skipped class to play guitar on the rooftop, and lived life to the fullest, unconcerned with grades or the future, living only in the moment. The moment Shen Qingzhou first laid eyes on her, his expression changed. It was a look I had never seen before, one that was both longing and restless. From that point on, he began to waver. On one hand, there was a stable future that had been set in stone for over a decade, a future I could see clearly in my years of supporting him through his studies. On one hand, there was the fresh, passionate, and unrestrained freedom of youth, the rebelliousness and wildness that Lin Wanwan brought into his life. Ji Xia, Wanwan asked me to skip the competition and go to a concert with her. What do you think? My thoughts were suddenly snapped back to reality. A warm breeze blew in through the window, rustling the exam papers on the corner of the desk. Standing before me was still the 17-year-old Shen Qingzhou, with his sharp features and youthful charm. He turned his head to look at me and asked that same question, one so familiar it was almost unnerving. I stared at him intently. I know exactly what he's thinking right now. He was somewhat tempted to go, yet he habitually relied on my judgment, subconsciously waiting for me to hold him back and keep him in check, just as I had done in the past. In my past life, I tried to stop it, only to end up filled with resentment and meet a tragic death by falling from a building. This time around, I won't stand in your way. I raised my eyes slightly, my tone calm. There was no persuasion, no objection, and not a trace of the anxiety and concern I had felt before. If you want to go, just go. Shen Qingzhou froze in his tracks. His surprise was obvious. His pupils dilated slightly, and the look of ease on his face vanished instantly, replaced by a look of disbelief and shock. He probably never thought I'd let him go. Ever since he was a child, no matter how temperamental he was or how rebellious he acted, I was always the one who kept him grounded, held him back, and took care of everything for him. After a few seconds of stiffness, a relaxed yet rebellious smile suddenly curled at the corners of his lips. It was as if the shackles that had weighed me down for years had suddenly vanished. I felt completely relaxed, filled with a sense of satisfaction at having finally achieved my goal. Okay. He gave a low murmur in response, immediately stood up, and without hesitation turned and headed for the back door of the classroom. Lin Wanwan had been waiting there by the window in the hallway for quite some time, wearing a short skirt and stud earrings. With her bold, expressive eyes, she saw him come out and immediately smiled. Reaching out to take his hand, I looked away, my heart filled with mixed emotions. There is bitterness, there is relief, there are the scars of love past, but above all, there is the peace that comes from letting go completely. All right, I will grant you every bit of the freedom you desire. From now on, your life has nothing to do with me. Shen Qingzhou, stop right there. They hadn't gone far when their homeroom teacher came rushing down the hallway. Seeing Shen Qingzhou and Lin Wanwan's retreating figures, his face turned ashen, and he grabbed Shen Qingzhou's arm. Do you know there's a chemistry competition this afternoon? It's a provincial competition. Winning a prize can boost your college entrance exam score. If you leave now, all the preparation you've done so far will be for nothing. Shen Qingzhou stopped in his tracks, turned his head, and looked somewhat impatient. But he didn't pull his hand away from his teacher's. The homeroom teacher took a deep breath, turned to look at me as I stepped out of the exam room, and said urgently, Su Jixia, you're his childhood friend, please try to talk some sense into him. The air was still for a moment. The students coming and going in the hallway all slowed their pace, casting subtle glances our way. Everyone's expectations were only natural for over a decade. Everyone had taken it for granted that I was the only one who could talk Shen Qingzhou out of it. Just me. I looked up at Shen Qingzhou, who was standing a few steps away. He was looking at me, too. That look was complex, containing a hint of deeply concealed probing, as well as a touch of something he himself might not even be aware of. Anticipation. He was a completely different person from the figure who had just walked away without looking back. He waited for me to speak up and stop him, just like I used to. I opened my mouth. But before I could say a word, Qingzhou suddenly smiled. There was a strange sense of certainty in that smile, as if he had known all along what I was going to say and had already prepared his defense. Su Zhixia. He called out my full name. His voice wasn't loud, but it rang clearly in the ears of everyone present. You don't need to say anything. I know what you're going to say. But this time, I'm not going to listen to you. He paused, a look of profound complexity flashing across his eyes as if he were resisting something all too familiar to him. Not everything has to be done the way you think is right. After saying that, he didn't look at me again. He turned, took Lin Wanwan's hand, and walked away without looking back. I stood there, watching their backs disappear around the corner of the staircase. The gasps and whispered comments around me all seemed as if separated by a veil. My heart suddenly started pounding. It's not because he left. It wasn't because he embarrassed me in front of the whole class. But it was because of what he said. This time, I won't listen to you. This time, I clenched my pencil case tightly in my hand. A thought so absurd it was almost laughable welled up from the depths of my heart. Qingzhou has also been reborn. On this day in my past life, fate took its first turn. It was the same afternoon, in the same stifling classroom. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes and brows betraying a young man's hesitation, along with a hint of anticipation he couldn't quite hide. Ji Xia. Wanwan asked me to skip the chemistry competition this afternoon so we can go to a concert. What do you think? Back then, I was too young, too focused on my future, and too desperate to hold on to the perfect future we had together. I frowned and earnestly tried to talk him out of it. Don't go. The competition can earn you extra points, and the college entrance exam is crucial. You can't mess around. He was silent for a long time. It wasn't that he didn't love me back then, nor was he just trying to be rebellious. He was simply torn between two choices, and my attempt to dissuade him was the final straw that crushed his restlessness. In the end, he listened to me. He gave up the concert to stay and take the exams, completely cutting off contact with Lin Wanwan, whom he had just started getting to know. He focused on his studies, worked steadily alongside me, got into Harvard, graduated successfully, and went on to find love and get married. Everyone thought this was the best possible outcome. Only Qingzhou himself remembered it for a lifetime and resented it for a lifetime. He didn't say anything, but it stung him deep down. In the monotony of his daily life, he couldn't help but think about the concert he never got to attend. In the dead of night, he would dream of Lin Wanwan playing the guitar on the rooftop back then. He would dream of her smiling and saying, "I'll set you free." He would dream of that unrestrained youth he had let slip away. When he woke up and saw me sleeping soundly by his side, all he felt was emptiness and boredom. He felt that marriage was like a fortress that had trapped him. He felt like I was a chain that was tying him down. He began to find himself thinking, what if more and more often what if he had gone to that concert? What if he had stayed by Wanwan's side? Would his life have been more exciting, more free, and more dramatic? He forgot that no one had ever held a knife to his throat back then. He chose it himself. He was the one who gave up the concert, gave up Lin Wanwan, chose a stable life, and chose me. But people don't want to blame themselves. It hurts too much to blame myself. It's much easier to blame others. So he started resenting me. He blames me for stopping him back then, for being too sensible and too cautious, for tying him down to the right path, so that he never once let loose in his entire life. He blamed all the mundane, trivial, and tedious aspects of our marriage on me. He treated all the frustration, stagnation, and mediocrity in his career as debts I owed him. Later, he heard that Lin Wanwan had dropped out of school, drifted from place to place, fallen into debt with loan sharks, and, with no way out, had taken her own life. That thorn, which had been lodged there for years, pierced his heart completely. He began to lie awake night after night, endlessly scrolling through Lin Wanwan's old photos and posts. As if under a spell, he felt he could have saved her. He felt that if he hadn't listened to me back then, he would have been able to set Lin Wanwan on the right path. She wouldn't have fallen so low. And she wouldn't have died. He never asked himself, even if he had gone to that concert back then, would he really have stayed by Lin Wanwan's side all along? Did he really have the power to change her life? Or would he have just been another mess for someone else to clean up? He didn't ask. All he could think was, "You ruined my redemption." It was I who stopped him. It was I who ruined his life and took Lin Wanwan's life. He hated him with a vengeance, and he had every right to. It seems as though, from start to finish, he was nothing more than an innocent victim who was manipulated. I gathered my paper and pen and walked into the exam room alone. I remained completely focused throughout, writing with ease as I confidently recalled all the key points I knew by heart. When the results came out, I successfully earned bonus points for the provincial competition, giving me even more confidence heading into the college entrance exams. Just as evening was falling, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Mrs. Shin. The moment the call connected, a wave of suppressed anger came crashing down on me, laced with anxiety and a sense of self-righteous indignation. "Geez, ya, what's gotten into you today? Qingzhou skipped class to go wild with that girl. The teacher even came to see me. Why didn't you stop him? You've known each other since childhood, and he listens to you more than anyone else. You're just standing by and watching him ruin his education. Why don't you do something about it?" In my previous life, I would have panicked, blamed myself, apologized endlessly, and rushed to find Shin Qingzhou to plead with him to come to his senses. Back then, I was more than willing to worry about him and shoulder all the pressure for him. I organized his admission tickets for him, kept track of registration deadlines for him, made sure he met the deadlines for every exam, stayed up late helping him review key points, and dealt with all his mom's reminders. They take care of every single detail. It's as if his life is my responsibility, his future is my KPI, and every misstep he takes is my failure. Looking back now, it really was none of my business. Why should I take responsibility for the life of someone who doesn't even care about his own future? But now, hearing these words, I just feel exhausted and find it all rather ridiculous. I spoke in a calm, measured tone. "Auntie, I'm just his childhood friend. I'm not his mother. I have no obligation to manage his life or bail him out for the rest of his life." There was an instant silence on the other end of the line, followed by heavy, labored breathing. I didn't say another word. I just hung up. The moment my phone screen went dark, the emotional tie that had bound me for over a decade snapped completely. All the tenderness, indulgence, concern, and favoritism of the past are now null and void. From now on, I will live only for myself. The day after the competition ended, the weather was still bright and blinding. After lunch, I walked out of the lab building with my books, planning to go to the library to work on some practice problems. The early summer breeze swept through the camphor grove, causing the branches and leaves to sway and casting dappled light and shadow. The path was filled with students hurrying back to their classrooms to study, each wearing the unique look of tension and exhaustion characteristic of seniors. Only the tree-lined avenue nearby seemed out of place. Chen Qingzhou rode his skateboard with one hand casually in his pocket, his school jacket slung loosely over his shoulder. Looking both carefree and defiant, Lin Wanwan had her arm around his, her head resting on his shoulder, smiling as she spoke to him, her earring glinting in the sunlight. The two of them chatted and laughed, completely lost in their own world. Carefree and radiant, it felt like two completely different worlds compared to the oppressive atmosphere of senior year. The moment he saw me, Chen Qingzhou stopped his skateboard. He walked toward me, his expression deliberately cold and defiant, as if he were trying to draw a clear line between us. He stared into my eyes, his tone tinged with the awkward stubbornness of a teenager. "Su Zhixia, I'm warning you, don't ever try to control me, lecture me, or restrict me again. You've meddled enough in the past. From now on, my business has nothing to do with you." As I looked at his young, stubborn face, A faint sense of melancholy flitted through my mind. He never used to talk to me like that before. When I was a freshman in high school, I took a sick day because I had a fever. He was on edge all day long. And as soon as school let out, he rushed over to see me, awkwardly bringing me medicine and cooking porridge for me. During the track meet, I fell while running the 800-meter race. Without a word, he rushed over, picked me up, and carried me away looking even more distressed than I was. Back then, the tenderness was real, the affection was real, and the way you looked at me was real too. But people change, hearts drift, and obsessions become twisted. I suppressed the flurry of emotions churning inside me, looked up at him impassively, and replied with a single, decisive word. Okay. No arguments. No pleas to stay. No explanations. Qingqing was momentarily speechless. He was ready to argue with me, ready to fend off my pleas, and even ready for my indignant questioning. But my abrupt refusal left him speechless. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes, but it was quickly masked by stubbornness. Lin Wanwan, standing beside me, gave a soft chuckle, looked up at me, and spoke with a touch of flippant indifference. It's so exhausting to bury yourself in books day in and day out. Youth is meant to be lived on your own terms. Trapping yourself in books and following the rules your whole life, how boring is that? Hey, sis. Wanna come hang out at the bar with us tonight? No sooner had the words left his mouth than a crisp, composed figure stepped up beside me. It's Qin Shubai. Yesterday, outside the exam hall, we happened to be seated next to each other. As I was leaving after turning in my exam, he called me over and said there was another way to draw the auxiliary lines for the last problem. We compared our answers in the hallway and found that our thinking was surprisingly in sync. As we chatted, we decided to go to the library together today to work on some practice problems. We're not exactly close, but we get along really well. Qin Shubai stopped in his tracks and stood firmly in front of me, his expression gentle but his tone carrying an unyielding detachment. It's not your place to judge other people's choices. Just mind your own business. The atmosphere froze instantly. Qingqing's gaze suddenly locked onto Qin Shubai. He furrowed his brow deeply, his gaze darting back and forth over Qin Shubai's features and figure, as if trying to identify something of the utmost importance that he just couldn't quite recall. I didn't want to waste time watching him agonize and second-guess himself, so I gently tugged at Qin Shubai's sleeve. Come on. Let's go to the library. Qin Shubai nodded gently and walked naturally alongside me. The two passed each other without exchanging another word. Behind us, Qingqing stood rooted to the spot, staring intently at our backs as we walked away side by side. My chest felt tight and suffocating, and I was filled with a jumble of emotions: irritation, unease, and resentment. It was the first time he truly realized it. It wasn't that he had finally broken free from my control. It was me who decided to let him go. Ever since that concert, Qingqing has completely let loose. Skipping class has become the norm. I'm rarely at evening study sessions, and I'm never in the classroom during lunch break. The rooftop became their private domain. Smoking, playing guitar, chatting and goofing around were recklessly wasting our senior year while others were racing against the clock. Many of their unsuspecting younger classmates at school envied them, seeing the two as a carefree, free-spirited couple who didn't worry about their studies. Only we, his classmates, knew that he was literally ruining his own future. But Qingqing didn't care in the least. He had a natural air of arrogance and self-confidence. He was exceptionally gifted from a young age. He never had to work hard to come in first. Decades of success had convinced him that his abilities were second to none. Deep down, he clung to a sliver of hope. I'm just taking a temporary break and having a little fun. If I cram for a month before the college entrance exams, I'll still be able to catch up and get into a top university. There were even countless moments when he would think of his former self. In his previous life, he was obedient and kept a low profile, studying diligently and following the traditional path. He was admitted to Harvard, built a successful career, and enjoyed a life that went smoothly. But he lived his whole life in such a rigid and dull way. In this life, he wanted to experience a carefree youth for once. He was certain that in the end he would still turn things around. Still achieve both fame and fortune, and make up for the freedom and passion he had lacked in his previous life. He even felt a hint of pride. I thought I could have the best of both worlds. When the results of the first midterm exam came out, his ranking plummeted from the top 10 in his grade position he had consistently held to somewhere around 120th place. The moment the report cards were handed out, the whole class erupted in an uproar. As soon as the bell rang, he stood right next to my desk, holding that glaring report card. The hallway was bustling with people, all of whom were stealing glances. He leaned against the wall, casually waving the test paper in his hand, his eyes betraying a deliberate air of defiance and bravado, even a touch of childish show-off. Su Jixia. Did you see that? I didn't even study hard, just took the test casually. And look at the results. Don't think you've got this in the baggy, just don't feel like taking the test. If this were my previous life, I would definitely be anxious. I'll immediately sit him down and go through each of his mistakes with him, one by one. I'll sternly remind him of how important senior year is, stay up late to help him review key concepts, and patiently urge him to focus. In the past, I truly valued his future more than my own. It hurts me more when he does poorly on a test than when I do, and I get more anxious when he takes a wrong turn than when I stumble myself. I was like a tireless ferryman, pushing him toward the other shore stroke by stroke, afraid he might drown along the way. But right now, I just feel exhausted. I looked up and gave him a casual glance. Yeah, I'm sure you're better than me. Good luck. His tone was as flat as a glass of plain water, no worry. No frustration at someone's failure to live up to expectations. Not even disappointment. At least disappointment implies you still care. I don't even care anymore. I looked away, closed my workbook, stood up, and walked right past him. As we passed each other, I could clearly smell the faint scent of smoke on him, strange and distant. That boy who used to smell only of laundry detergent and would make me blush whenever he leaned in to explain a problem to me, have no idea where he's gone. I didn't look back. The test paper Shinqingzhou had been FLI. Ping through in his hand came to an abrupt halt. The smile on his face froze instantly, and all his bravado and smugness vanished in an instant. He stood there frozen, watching my impassive figure walk away without a single glance back. And for the first time, a wave of intense panic washed over him. No, it wasn't like that before. In the past, even if he took just a small step backward, I would get anxious, worry about him, and nag him. Even if he acts out of spite, I'll still comfort him gently. I would never be so cold or ignore him like this. This complete indifference hurt him more than any accusation or argument ever could. He clenched his report card so tightly that his knuckles turned white. For the first time, a hollow sense of dread welled up inside me. He remained stubborn and refused to back down. But inside, he was already starting to lose his composure, while he continued to skip class and hang out with Lin Wanwan. He couldn't help but keep glancing in my direction, watching me quietly work through practice problems and memorize material, watching me move forward steadily step by step, stood in stark contrast to his sloth and decadence. He began to feel lost. At first, I wasn't sure if this gamble was worth it. Yet the memories of his past life's success and fame stubbornly propped up his pride. He told himself, "It's okay. I'm sure I'll win in the end. Time flies, and the first mock exam is here." This is the first large-scale formal standardized test for senior high school students, and the results will largely determine the outcome of the college entrance exams. In the exam room, everyone had their heads down, writing furiously, their pens never stopping. Only Shinqingzhou, pen in hand, could not sit still. The exam paper lay spread out before me, covered with dense rows of questions that were unfamiliar and obscure. He could no longer recall the formulas he once knew by heart. He struggled even to read the instructions for complex problems he used to solve at a glance. And on the comprehensive science exam, large sections of the paper remained blank, with no idea where to begin. All that idleness, skipping class, and self-indulgence had completely drained the reserves he had built up over the years. He bit down on the end of his pen, a thin sheen of sweat beading on his forehead. As the faint glimmer of hope in his heart crumbled away bit by bit, the number of questions I couldn't answer kept growing. And my panic kept mounting. He barely managed to hang on until the end of the exam. On the day the results were announced, the school-wide list was posted in the lobby of the academic building. I'm holding steady in the top 3, maintaining my position and performing flawlessly. Meanwhile, Qingzhou's name plummeted to well over 300th place. Just barely made the cut for the top-tier universities. This was the worst, most dismal, and most pathetic test he had ever taken in his entire life. The students around him were buzzing with talk. Everyone could see that the former prodigy had fallen from grace. He clutched the thin report card, his fingertips trembling violently, his face pale. All the pride, arrogance, and complacency in my heart were instantly shattered. With tears in his eyes, he blocked my path at the corner of the hallway as I walked by. The boy's eyes were filled with panic, confusion, and anxiety, as well as a hint of resentment he didn't even understand himself. He stared intently at me, his voice trembling ever so slightly. Su Jixia, do you know something? He wasn't asking me. He was just checking. From that afternoon on, everything became utterly bizarre. I didn't try to talk him out of it. I didn't stop him, and I didn't cling to the hem of his shirt to keep him from leaving, like I used to. I let him skip class, let him go to concerts, and let him live those days he called freedom. He thought he had broken free from his shackles and was finally breathing fresh air. But later he realized that what he had thought were shackles were actually the ropes keeping him from falling off the cliff, and I was the one who let go first. What baffled him even more was that I didn't seem surprised at all. Every time he fell, every time he failed an exam, every time he pushed his life one step closer to the abyss, I remained unmoved. No heartache, no anxiety, not even a single "I told you so." That calmness didn't seem like that of a childhood friend who had been let down. It's as if someone had read the script in advance. It feels like I knew all along that he would end up like this. It was as if I had foreseen his downfall long ago. So I distanced myself early on, gave up early on, and cut myself off completely. He finally realized what was happening and panicked. I looked up at his reddened eyes, my expression calm and impassive. What do you know? He opened his mouth, his throat convulsing violently. But he couldn't get a single word out. He couldn't say, I can't say I remember being the top scorer on the college entrance exam in my past life, or that I had a bright future ahead of me, or that my life was supposed to go smoothly. Talking about something as absurd as reincarnation would just make people think you're crazy. All my doubts, fears, and resentment were bottled up inside me, with no one to confide in. He stared intently at me, trying to find in my eyes a trace of old affection, a hint of reluctance, or a spark of regret. But there was nothing, only utter indifference and a detached calm. I didn't linger. I sidestepped him and walked straight out. Qingzhou froze in his tracks. As the wind ruffled the hem of his robe, a sense of regret welled up within him for the first time. It seems like I really did make a mistake. The mistake was being too arrogant. The mistake was being too greedy. The mistake was not trusting in years of stability, but instead choosing to gamble on an illusory freedom. But this remorse wasn't enough to make him change his ways. He still clung to a sliver of hope. There was still time. There were still the second and third mock exams. I could still turn things around. The disappointment from the first mock exam kept Qingzhou in line for only a few days. On the eve of the second mock exam, he crammed for a few nights, and thanks to his remaining natural talent, his rank improved by a few dozen places, bringing him back to the middle of the class. That tiny bit of progress was enough to make him feel on top of the world again. All remorse vanished into thin air, and hope once again filled my heart. He was once again convinced that he had simply been out of practice for too long and that with a little effort, he could get back on track. No need to rush, we'll have plenty of time to step it up for the third mock exam. He kept telling himself this over and over again, trying to numb himself. So, he fell back into his old ways, skipping class, skateboarding, going to concerts, and hanging out with Lin Wanwan. I still do all that just as much as ever. The textbooks were still brand new. the exercise books still blank, and he had squandered the most precious time of his senior year. As for me, I've fully settled into my own peaceful senior year. I no longer let anyone distract me, nor do I worry about anyone else. Day after day, I practice problems, review my work, and build my knowledge, steadily moving toward my goal of getting into Harvard. Chinshubai always seems to show up just when I need him. Quiet, gentle, and reserved. He'd bring me water when I got tired from doing practice problems, accompany me to the cafeteria, and walk back to the dorm with me after evening study hall. He never overstepped his bounds or bothered me. He just quietly stayed by my side. Countless times, Qingzhou saw us walking side by side from a distance. Every time, his expression would instantly darken, and a tangled web of bitterness, irritation, and jealousy would well up inside him. He looked at Meth Girl, who used to revolve entirely around him, only to find that he no longer held a single place in my heart, and that someone else now stood by my side. He began to feel confused, regretful, and indecisive more and more often. Sometimes, when he's alone late at night, he can't help but think back to the past. I think back to those nights when I patiently sat with him as he worked through practice problems, to the thick stack of notes I organized for him, and to how he used to be the center of my world. It's really great, stable, reliable, always with someone to catch you when you fall, always with someone who favors you. But when he thought of his dull, monotonous life in his previous incarnation and of Lin Wanwan's tragic end, forced himself to suppress his regret. He stubbornly told himself, "I'm not wrong. I'm making up for the regrets of my past life." Amid this constant internal struggle and self-delusion, the third mock exam arrived as scheduled. This time, fate didn't give him any more breaks. The results of the exam, which I took completely unprepared, were even worse than those of the first mock exam. The ranking plummeted once again, firmly cementing its place at the bottom. At that moment, Qingzhou finally lost his composure completely. Fear swept through his body, shattering all his delusions of grandeur. He finally realized that he had really fallen too far behind. From that day on, he stayed up late like a madman, working through practice problems. The desk lamp burned all night, and the table was piled high with exam papers. He was doing his utmost to make up for it, but the work I've fallen behind on has long since become an insurmountable obstacle. Math formulas are completely foreign to me. I memorize English vocabulary only to forget it right away. And I can't even grasp the basic approach to complex problems on the science comprehensive exam. The more I study, the more anxious I get. The more I practice, the more overwhelmed I feel. Countless late nights. Anxiety weighed so heavily on him that he could hardly breathe. He always finds himself thinking about his past life without being able to help it. In his previous life, he never had to struggle so desperately. It was me who helped him organize his notes bit by bit, stayed up late to compile personalized study materials for him, highlighted key points, went over his mistakes with him, and stood by him as he steadily made it through his senior year of high school. It was me who shielded him from every detour, managed every risk for him, and provided a safety net for his entire life. Back then, he took my efforts for granted and never appreciated them. This time around, I'm walking away completely and won't get involved anymore. He finally realized firsthand that without my support, his so-called talent was completely worthless. The countdown to the college entrance exam on top of the school building shows the numbers rapidly decreasing day by day. The red numbers were glaring and cold, serving as a reminder to everyone that the college entrance exam was fast approaching. Everyone else is steadily pushing forward and filling in the gaps. Only Qingzhou remained trapped in an endless cycle of panic, regret, and inner turmoil, sinking deeper with every step, never to return to the way things were. The road ahead is completely shrouded in darkness. The moment the bell rang to signal the end of the final college entrance exam, the tension that had gripped the entire city finally dissipated. Everyone rushed out of the exam hall, cheering, hugging, weeping, and celebrating 3 years' worth of pent-up emotions finally bursting forth. I walked out of the exam hall, the sunlight fell on me, and instead of a frenzied sense of relief, I felt only a grounded calm. Over the past 100 days, I've stayed focused and taken each step with care. So the results are already second nature to me. The score release portal opened that evening. With a light tap of my finger, the moment my score popped up on the screen. It came as no surprise I was definitely in at Harvard. The next moment, Chinshubai sent me a screenshot. His score was almost exactly the same as mine. He was still as taciturn as ever, saying only, "See you at Harvard." I replied with a simple okay. And a sense of calm settled over me. Before long, the class chat group was in an uproar. Everyone was posting their scores, sharing their joy, and congratulating one another. And the feed was filling up at lightning speed. I scrolled down in silence and finally saw Shinchingzhou's name at the bottom of the list. A standard first-tier university. Just barely made the cut. Barely managed to get into school. For anyone else, that would have been quite good. But for Shinchingzhou, it was a complete and utter downfall. Everyone remembers that back in his freshman and sophomore years of high school, he was the teacher's top-ranked prodigy, the co-valedictorian alongside me. Two people who once stood side by side in the clouds just 1 year apart. Yet worlds apart. My fingertips paused for a moment, no sense of regret. No ripples. He forged this path step by step on his own. No one forced him to skip class. No one forced him to waste his time. And no one forced him to give up on his future. It was his own arrogance, his own greed, and his own conviction that he could have it all. Later, there was a class reunion. I hadn't planned on going, but the class president called me 3 times, saying, "This is the last time we'll all be together like this." So I went after all. Shinchingzhou was there too. He had lost a lot of weight. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. His hair had grown long and remained uncut, hanging loosely around his face, and he looked as if he were covered in a layer of dust. He sat in the corner, downing one drink after another. The alcohol only made his disheveled appearance stand out even more. Someone whispered behind his back. I heard he barely made the cutoff for the first-tier universities on the college entrance exam. Is that for real? You're absolutely right. After hanging out with that transfer student for a year, he's completely wasted his life. Shinchingzhou must have heard it. He suddenly stood up, glass in hand, his face flushed from drinking, laughing heartily so loudly that the whole private room could hear him. So what if it's just 1 book? I'm still awesome even with just 1. Let me tell you, a degree is just a stepping stone. The people who really get things done rely on vision and courage. His words began to trail off into gibberish as he spouted off those trite platitudes he didn't even believe himself. As if reciting from a script. No one replied. There was a moment of silence. Then someone gave an awkward smile and looked down to continue eating. I smiled too, but didn't say anything. Let's hope so. In September, when the school year began, I started at Harvard. A spacious campus, a concentration of top students, a rigorous academic workload, and a whole new life, clean and bright. I have completely left behind all the struggles, all the obsessions, and all the heavy burdens of my senior year. Chinshubai was there too. We were in the same college, although we weren't in the same class. Our buildings were right next to each other. During our freshman year, we spent our time together in the library. He sat across from me, so quiet it was as if he weren't even there. It was only when he occasionally slid a peeled tangerine across the table that I realized he was still there. During our sophomore year, we teamed up to compete in an innovation and entrepreneurship competition. He wrote the code while I drafted the business plan. We pulled all-nighters for an entire semester and ended up winning the National Gold Award. Our junior year project finally got off the ground, and we registered a company. He handled the tech side, and I handled operations. We built the business from the ground up. And when we secured our first round of funding, we each had a bowl of beef noodle soup for 18 yuan at a small restaurant outside the school's south gate. He said, "Things will only get better from here." And I replied, "Yeah, it's not about earth-shattering romance. It's about taking steady steps forward. Every step counts." And that was when Shinchingzhou's life truly began to fall apart. After he got into a regular first-tier university, his mindset became completely warped. He is forever trapped in the memories of his past life. He remembered being the top student in the city, remembered the prestige of his prestigious university, and remembered his high salary after graduation, his successful career, and how everyone envied him. So he looked down on this ordinary university, looked down on his hardworking classmates, and looked down on the steady path of academic study. He is convinced that it's not that he's not good enough, it's that the platform isn't good enough for him. He always felt he had a vision ahead of his time and was destined for greatness. He thought studying was a waste of time and that starting a business was the only way to turn his life around, while his roommates spent their time in the library, cramming for exams, and studying for certifications. He skipped class every day to go out and look for projects and investors. He brags to everyone about his broad horizons and promising future, painting a picture of a Pinthesky future. But reality is the cruelest of all. With no prestigious university to back him up, no connections, no resources, and no ability to get things done, just a head full of arrogance and impatience, no one was willing to trust him. Rejected time and time again, hitting a wall time and time again, returning home dejected time and time again, after struggling for half a semester. I haven't accomplished a thing. After much persuasion, I finally managed to convince a small, inexperienced investor to part with 50,000 yuan. It didn't take long for the other party to realize he was all talk and no action. So they pulled their investment and walked away the very next day. The project fell through completely, and we even ended up in a small amount of debt. My dream of starting a business was shattered, and I was instantly overwhelmed by pressure. Meanwhile, Lin Wanwan was living a carefree and laid-back life at vocational school. She's still just the same as ever, playful, boisterous, and in need of company. What had initially struck Shen Qingzhou as a free-spirited and passionate personality had now become his greatest burden. He was anxious, irritable, in debt, and uncertain about his future. Every day felt suffocating, but Lin Wanwan didn't understand the pressure he was under. She continued to bombard him with calls every day, acting cute and throwing tantrums, demanding that he play with her, go shopping with her, and stay up late chatting with her. For the first time, Shen Qingzhou felt annoyed, utterly annoying. He began to grow weary of the very freedom that had once led him to abandon his future without a second thought. On countless late nights, he would be torn between two conflicting feelings. He'll recall the peaceful and smooth life he led in his past life. Remember the winters when I helped him work through practice problems. Recall the thick stacks of notes I organized for him. And remember how I always stood firmly by his side. He has had moments of regret. It really does. Even if only for a moment. He admitted he had made the wrong choice, but the regret was short-lived. It was quickly suppressed by the obsession deep within him. He told himself obsessively, in my past life, I was successful. I just never got to experience a carefree youth. Once I get through this rough patch, I'll make a comeback just like always and I'll still be better than everyone else. He refused to accept that he was finished. So he kept putting on a brave face, kept pushing through, and kept deceiving himself. Late one night, I was fast asleep. A voice message from an unknown number popped up on my phone. It was Shen Qingzhou, sounding drunk. His voice was hoarse and despondent, thick with a nasal tone, unable to hide his breakdown. Su Jixia. Why didn't you stop me back then? I woke up, opened it, and listened to it. No heartache, no emotional stirrings, no hint of rekindled feelings. I just find it ridiculous. In my past life, I did everything I could to stop you, but you hated me for the rest of your life and pushed me off a building. In this life, I let you go to set you free. Yet you still ask me why I didn't stop you. Human nature is always greedy. I just deleted the voice message without replying. I won't put up with his indecision one more time. My college days were clear and bright. My company and Chenshubai's company secured our first round of angel investment and moved into a startup incubator near the school. Although I'm still in the early stages and busy from morning till night, that feeling of moving forward and upward is both grounding and energizing. Every now and then, I come across posts on my social media feed from old classmates showing off their graduate school acceptance letters, job offers from top tech companies, or visas for studying abroad. Everyone seems to be charging full steam ahead toward their future. Meanwhile, Qingzhou's life was visibly going downhill. My business venture was a complete failure. My debts kept piling up. My studies fell completely by the wayside, and my friends gradually drifted away. The aura of genius he once possessed has been completely shattered, leaving behind nothing but restlessness, overconfidence, and a short-sighted pursuit of quick success. Ambition cannot match ability, and desire cannot fill the void of reality. Little by little, he abandoned all his principles and became selfish, despicable, and unscrupulous. But I never imagined he would fall so far. On a rainy day in early winter, the entrance to Harvard was shrouded in mist and rain. When I walked out of the school gates after class, I saw a girl in the distance, soaking wet and looking a sorry sight, crouched by the side of the road, shivering. It's Lin Wanwan. Her hair was soaking wet, with strands clinging to her face. Her makeup was a complete mess, with her eyeliner smudged into 2 black smears. Her clothes were covered in mud and dirty water. She looked as if she just crawled out of a garbage heap. She crouched there, hugging her shoulders, her whole body trembling like a leaf in the wind. The moment she saw me, her eyes welled up with tears. She opened her mouth but couldn't get a sound out. And then she broke down in tears. "Xia, I have nowhere else to go." Her voice was so hoarse it was barely audible, as if she had been crying for a long time, or shouting for a long time. For a moment, I felt a pang of pity and bent down to help her up. Her hands were as cold as ice. I took her back to my rental apartment. I turned on the heat, found her some clean clothes, and poured her a cup of hot water. Pressing it into her hands, she held the cup, but her fingertips still couldn't stop trembling. She cried for a long time before she finally calmed down and, in fits and starts, told the whole truth. Lin Wanwan's parents divorced when she was young, and neither family wanted her. Her father has a new wife and a new child, and he treats her like a burden. Her mother has remarried and moved to another province, and she doesn't even answer her calls during the new year. No one asked if she had eaten today. No one taught her how to protect herself. And no one cared where she went or who she was with. It was the same in my previous life. No one was there to help her. No one told her which paths she could take and which she couldn't. She was deceived time and time again by smooth-talking scoundrels in society, and eventually found herself drowning in unpayable high-interest debt. With no way out, she jumped off the roof, rebellious, outspoken, fashion-conscious, skipping class, all just a shell of self-protection. With a don't care attitude, she shielded the tattered version of herself that felt no one has ever wanted me. During her senior year of high school, Qingzhou took the initiative to get close to her, joining her in her wild antics, playing with her, and skipping class with her. Those words, "I'll set you free," were the only ray of light in her bleak childhood. She truly loved Qingzhou with all her heart and soul, without holding anything back. With his back against the wall, Qingzhou finally set his sights on her. He was in debt and desperate to turn things around. He was in urgent need of funds. He tricked her into going out on a business dinner, claiming he needed her to meet an investor. Then secretly slipped a drug into her drink. He planned to offer Lin Wanwan to the middle-aged boss in exchange for debt relief, investment, and a chance to turn his fortunes around. In her final moments of confusion, Lin Wanwan instinctively fought her way out, running frantically through the rain until she had no choice but to come find me. She was crying so hard that her whole body was shaking, and her voice was hoarse. Did he ever love me at all? Not even a little bit. I looked into her bloodshot, vacant eyes and spoke calmly, my words shattering all pretense. He doesn't love anyone. He cares only about his own future, his own reputation, and his own sense of resentment. In his previous life, he stood on the rooftop and blamed me, saying I had ruined Lin Wanwan and destroyed his chance at redemption. But the truth was cruel from start to finish. No one ruined him. He was so obsessed with comfort, freedom, and having it all that he ended up with nothing. Yet he still tries to shift the blame onto others. Lin Wanwan was silent for a long time, tears falling one by one. until she finally came to her senses. "I'm going to call the police." The next day, I stayed with her the entire time as she organized the evidence, gave her statement, and submitted the documents. The evidence is conclusive. Chen Qingzhou was suspected of breaking the law and was summoned by the police for questioning. He was eventually released on bail pending trial. But the criminal record will remain on his record for the rest of his life. He completely ruined all his legitimate opportunities, academic pursuits, public service, certification exams, and employment, all off the table. At that moment, his life was essentially over. After being released on bail, Chen Qingzhou completely lost his mind. He had completely lost any chance of improving his lot through education or landing a decent job. His reputation was in tatters. He was drowning in debt, and his future looked bleak. He wasn't ready to give up. He still remembers how glorious his life was in his previous incarnation. He remembers how promising and successful he was in his youth. The stark contrast drove him mad. He no longer works steadily. All he wants is to get rich quick and turn things around against all odds. To make money, he'll stop at nothing, using his good looks. He deliberately flirts with wealthy women, using sweet talk to swindle them out of money, resources, and investments. He clung to a last shred of gambler's mentality. "As soon as I turn things around, I'll be back on top. And I'll prove that I was right." But the cycle of life is always fair. Before long, the wealthy woman's husband found out about everything and showed up at her door with some people. In the chaos of the battle, Chen Qingzhou had both legs broken, subsequent wound infections, persistent high fever, and a series of complications led to his immediate admission to the intensive care unit, where he was in critical condition on several occasions. The day I heard the news, I took some time off to go to the hospital. It's not that I'm soft-hearted, nor is it nostalgia. I just want to see with my own eyes what becomes of the person who pushed me off the 10th floor and resented me for the rest of their life. The pungent smell of disinfectant in the ward was overpowering and oppressive. The once handsome and spirited young man now lay in bed, his legs wrapped in thick bandages, his face pale and gaunt, his eyes sunken, looking utterly forlorn. The moment he saw me, a flash of light suddenly burst from the depths of his lifeless eyes. It was like grasping at a last straw. He struggled frantically, ignoring the tearing of his wounds, clutching my wrist with a frenzied, savage grip. His emotions completely shattered as he screamed, Why, Su Jixia. In my past life, I was the top scholar. My career was a success. I had everything. Why do I have nothing in this life? What on earth did I do wrong?" He's gone mad, completely mad. He spent his entire life wallowing in self-pity and blaming others. He has always felt that it was my interference back then that robbed him of his life. I quietly lowered my gaze to watch his frantic, disheveled appearance, and all the lingering traces of old affection, youthful regrets, and fragmented pain in my heart were completely erased. Word by word, my voice clear and icy, I shattered all his illusions. "Because I've been reborn, too." Chen Qingzhou's whole body stiffened suddenly, and his pupils contracted to the size of pinheads. He was trembling all over and stared at me in disbelief. "On the night of the wedding, on the rooftop of the 10th floor of the high school, you pushed me down yourself. You blame me for standing in your way, for ruining Lin Wanwan, and for destroying your so-called free life." I slowly pulled my wrist back and watched as the color drained from his face in an instant. "In this life, I've never stood in your way. I didn't try to talk you out of it. I didn't interfere. And I didn't bail you out. I let you go down every path you wanted to take. Chen Qingzhou, what happened to you today is entirely your own doing." The moment those words were spoken, the last glimmer of light in his eyes faded completely. All the self-pity, all the resentment and bitterness, all the grudges and obsessions, and all the what-ifs, they all crumbled and shattered. He finally understood. It wasn't me who ruined him. It's not that fate is unfair. It's not a regret of youth. He is selfish, greedy, arrogant, cowardly, and always shifts the blame onto others. It was he who, step by step, destroyed the bright and promising life he was meant to have. His lips trembled, but he couldn't make a sound. Tears streamed down his face, and he completely broke down. Belated regret overwhelmed him. But it was already too late to turn back. The dust has settled. It's all over. Qingqingzhou was left with a lifelong disability, burdened by a criminal record and massive debts, trapped in endless regret and darkness. With no chance of turning his life around for the rest of his days, he will spend the rest of his life tormenting himself with thoughts of I could have. He got what he deserved. As for Lin Wanwan, she had completely left her rebellious and naive days behind. She came to her senses, turned over a new leaf, and withdrew from school to retake the entrance exams. For a whole year, she buried herself in her studies, desperately trying to make up for lost time. With sheer determination, she defied the odds and was admitted to a reputable university. Before school started, she asked me to meet up with her. She's changed a lot. She no longer wears short skirts or those sparkly stud earrings. Her hair is pulled back into a neat ponytail, and the sharpness of her once defiant gaze has faded, revealing the gentle person beneath. She bought me a bubble tea, and the two of us sat on a bench in the mall's atrium, chatting casually. As they talked about the future, she suddenly smiled, her eyes crinkling with a touch of shyness. Jixia, I heard your company with Qinshubai is doing really well. It's going okay, just getting started, I said. She bit down on her straw, as if she'd mustered up a lot of courage. Well, once I graduate from college, if your company is still hiring, I'll send in my resume and you'd better give me a leg up. As soon as she finished speaking, she started laughing, but as she laughed, her eyes began to well up. I know she wasn't joking when she said she'd pull some strings. She was telling me that she was moving on. I laughed too, and replied earnestly, okay, I'll be waiting for you. She nodded vigorously, held back her tears, and didn't say anything else that sounded overly sentimental. As she was saying goodbye, she took a few steps, then turned back, waved at me, and called out, Mr.Su, wait for me. The noise was so loud that a lot of people in the mall turned to look. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. She was just a poor soul who grew up deprived of love and went astray. From start to finish, she was never the one who truly ruined everything. My life has taken a turn toward complete brightness and openness. Qinshubai and I went from sitting side by side in the library during our senior year of high school to spending every waking moment together during our 4 years at Harvard. He is gentle, calm, and reliable, and he always stands firmly by my side. He won't drain me, he won't control me, and he won't blame me for his own failures and regrets. What he gave me was unwavering affection, steadfast companionship, and a future built on mutual commitment. We went to grad school together, graduated together, and have been steadily building our careers together. Life is simple and peaceful, and every year is a joy. I have finally and completely emerged from the shadow of that turbulent youth, a time of love and hate, and a lifetime of resentment. In my previous life, I devoted more than a decade of my youth to supporting someone else's life, only to end up falling to my death from a building and being slandered. In this life, I let others go and redeem myself. I will no longer sacrifice myself for anyone, clean up after anyone, or bear the burden of regret for anyone. I walk my own path and follow my own light. The road ahead is clear, and everything looks bright. I have finally arrived at the glorious rest of my Lifia life all my own.